Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining. Today's Performance Plus webinar will talk about how to reach high net worth individuals. And first, just to cover some quick housekeeping items. So this is an informal session. The idea is that we'll provide expert insight from our team here. So please ask any questions using the Q&A feature. We'll try to answer them throughout or also at the end. The session will be recorded and sent after and available on our website, mcsachiperformance.com. All participants will be muted automatically, so don't worry. But please use the chat feature if you want to discuss anything with your fellow attendees. And then we will be running potentially some polls throughout, so please participate. And lastly, we're offering a couple of audits for strategies for how to reach high net worth individuals customized to you. This will be for those who attend, first come, first serve. So contact us at the email address here to find out more. So now that that's covered, we'll introduce ourselves very quickly. So a little bit of background on who you're speaking with today. So quickly, MNC Saatchi Performance, leading global performance marketing agency, starting back in 2006, initially focused on mobile, and since expanding to help brands thrive in the overall digital landscape. And our friend Yasmin from StackAdapt. StackAdapt is a leading omnichannel DSP and MarTech platform operating globally across 7 programmatic channels. StackAdapt specializes in targeting the highest quality of inventory with highly accurate targeting, exceptional service, and delivering fully tailored media solutions across any channel and objective. So I'll do a quick intro for myself. I'm John, based in New York. I've been with the agency for 8 years now. A quick fun fact about me is I'm midway through my 15th mystery novel of the year, and we're only in March or May. Oh, goodness. Now over to you, Lavinia.
Hi, I'm Lavinia Morris. I am the Managing Director for EMEA over here at MNC Saatchi Performance. I have a total of 10 years here. I boomeranged, so I left when I came back. So a total of 10 years. And fun fact about me is that I play the violin. How's that for a fun fact? Yasmin, over to you.
That's a good one. Hi, everybody. My name is Yasmin Tamir. I've been at StackAdapt for around 4 years now. I'm currently leading EMEA strategy with a real focus on real estate, travel, luxury retail, and B2B. And my fun fact is that because I was raised all over the world by my parents, I speak between 3 to 3.5 to 4 languages, depending on my confidence levels and how many drinks I've had on that day. So that's my fun fact.
I love the 3.5. Perfect. So now on to a couple of polls, and we'll try to cover some of these responses throughout. So please, I believe we'll start the polls right now. Yep, here we go. So please vote. This will help us tailor some of the rest of the presentation. Give everyone a quick moment. And please let us know in the chat if you have any issues accessing these. Cool, starting to see some votes come through. Good sign that it's working. All right, looks like we have a few votes on the second one as well. So just a very quick top line, when we're asking what are some of the biggest challenges, it looks like we're getting some responses for actually accessing these audiences and choosing the right channels, some around budget restraints. So we'll be sure to address those points. And then your primary goal when marketing to these individuals, lead generation and relationship building and nurturing. So good to know. We'll try to cover off on some of these points throughout. Great. So then, here's what we'll cover today. So understanding the modern high net worth individual. So understanding the different customer profiles, online behaviors, and debunking some common myths. Next, we'll use data and context on how we actually identify these individuals to minimize media waste. We'll talk about more tactically how we actually reach them across different verticals, such as business, travel, lifestyle, and more. We'll cover some premium media experiences. So this is where we'll cover across digital out of home, CTV, and the overall digital landscape. And then finally, tapping into more cultural and seasonal nuances. We'll cover locally across the globe, as well as some nuggets around Gen Z and beyond. So without further ado, let's dive in. So to make this a bit interactive, first I want to chat with Lavinia. So let's start with understanding the wealthy, affluent audiences before we deep dive into how to reach them. So what are some ways to you that these audiences stand apart?
Yeah, absolutely. So that first high net worth individual, that's anyone that has anything between $1 million and $5 million of investable assets. So that means readily available wealth, not just residence or collectibles unless they're liquidated. So this is money they have actual access to. And those ultra high net worth individuals are anyone that has 30 million and above. So really you're looking at your billionaires at that point to have that much accessible cash. But to be honest, that number doesn't really tell you an awful lot as to how as marketers we reach them. I think what we really try and identify within these audiences is what is their mindset. So are they legacy builders? Are they crypto rich Gen Zers? Really, who are they? And I think the number of their wealth isn't really what we're that interested in. It's more what they do with it that matters, and as marketers.
Great point. So then to that point, Yasmin, I'd be curious your thoughts on maybe if you could talk about some key challenges on how to reach them.
Yeah, I mean, it's always obviously hard to reach any highly targeted audience, but I think particularly when it comes to those high net worth individuals, those challenges are just multiplied because essentially everyone is competing for their attention and just a slice of their wealth. So just some of the challenges that we see are the most prominent when it comes to targeting them. First of all is precision. I think we often see from the clients that we speak to that in the past they found, maybe a lot of their ad spend or marketing effort isn't actually reaching that intended audience, and potentially due to, some poor segmentation or really not having that level of control with some, vendors that have a bit of a black box nature to them. So you can't really get in there and see exactly who you're targeting and how you're going after them. So obviously control, transparency, and accuracy are going to be so important when it comes to reducing that waste. Another big one is quality as well. Now, I think it's extremely obvious that those wealthy individuals are going to expect and demand high quality in products, in your products and services. But actually, how are you mirroring that when it comes to your retail strategy, your media strategy, channel choice, and kind of that overall marketing experience? Like, we consistently see that, luxury shoppers expect the digital experience to reflect the premium nature of the product. So again, they really kind of expect that consistent brand experience across all of the channels and the many devices that these guys are using. So, again, making sure that you have that approach that is really considerate of the complexity of that journey is going to be a must. And then finally, there's Gen Z, who of course mirror many of the themes that we see, but absolutely have some of their own nuances as well, and ways that they like to engage with brands. One of the biggest ones being the fact that they really value experience way higher than anything else, including price. So how we again considering that experience. And also we see that they need relevance when it comes to brands, and really that connection and context as well, and ads needing to complement their existing journey. So yeah, in short, and obviously we'll get into it further, but creating a really premium and consistent media experience that reflects what you're selling is going to be absolutely essential.
Perfect. Thank you both. So now that Lavinia has covered a little bit more about defining who they are and Yasmin shared some challenges on how to reach them, take a quick second now to share the poll results so that everyone can see. So one of the biggest challenges, this still aligns with what we were seeing behind the scenes, getting access and then crafting the right messaging, choosing channels. And then for poll number 2, primary goal. So I think, still aligns with lead gen and relationship building and nurturing. So now let's actually get into it. Let's put this to life and talk about actually going to market, actually reaching them, and an overall messaging strategy. So Lavinia, maybe if you can kick us off and set the scene from a global perspective. We know these individuals are everywhere for the most part. And we see this change over time. Are there any key trends that you've observed more recently on where they are?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everyone used to think that luxury was very Western. Luxury is no longer Western. I think we used to think it was the golden triangle when we talked about it. So like London, Paris, New York, but that's an incredibly outdated way of now thinking about where these high net worth individuals actually are. I mean, whilst the US does remain the largest proportion of high net worth individuals, it is actually showing the slowest growth. So in contrast with that, you've got places like the UAE where the high net worth population is growing in double digits. You've got Vietnam, where by, I believe, 2027, it's going to see a 70% rise in its millionaires. And then you've got these emerging markets such as Colombia and Mexico, which are really increasing that kind of cross-border wealth and luxury consumption. So some really interesting trends emerging. And I think what that just generally shows is a redistribution of that luxury influence. But it creates problems for us, right? Because that playbook doesn't necessarily travel that well. So the way that you communicate to someone in Asia and Singapore might be completely different, that messaging and how it resonates with someone in Abu Dhabi. So we really need to consider, language, symbolism, even like the tone that we're using in our creative and campaigns so that we can make sure that it resonates with all our audiences. And I think, if you consider that global strategy and if you don't take it through to local sensitivity and nuance, then actually ultimately the campaigns won't scale particularly well and will start alienating audiences. So whilst the opportunity is growing, which is really exciting for brands, it's also creating a little bit more risk as to how we reach them.
Perfect. And spoiler alert for our viewers, we will be going into some of the creative ways into which you can speak to them toward the end. So sticking with you, Lavinia, maybe if you could also talk through some trends and changes of the billionaires of yesteryear into today and onward.
I think the old cliche, everyone thought it was middle-aged white men, maybe on a yacht. But the new reality is that we are seeing that shift. So now we're seeing over 1/3 of our world's wealth, the world's wealth is now controlled by women. We're seeing that 60% of these high net worth audiences are under the age of 45, and they are actively engaging online. And even more of them are also trying to reduce their carbon footprint to show that they have sustainability interests. And we're starting to see this real segmentation within this audience, within this segment of people. And so, for example, Gen Zers are looking for, access over ownership. Millennials want authenticity. Those boomers still have that kind of legacy power where they, so the audiences aren't uniform at all. And their motivations are incredibly different. But whilst that's really interesting, it makes them incredibly difficult to reach. I think, when we consider this as just one segment and broad segments, it's going to be really difficult to engage with audiences. So we need to make sure that we're kind of thinking about all the subsections within this group of people and how best to communicate with them.
Excellent. And while we were all discussing some of the content for today's session, I really liked how you broke it down into some of these 4 kind of key pillars. Maybe if you could share some insight here with the audience.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we're thinking about this subset, this high net worth individuals, really they've got 4 categories that kind of drives their purchase decisions. So travel is a top priority, but it's not really any travel. It's, they want those remote escapes. They want that personalization, which Yasmin mentioned. They want privacy. They also want luxury goods, which is another one. That's more a status, a symbol, and also kind of rings true to kind of identity and legacy. You've got property as well. We've seen, that almost a quarter of that audience is going to purchase homes this year. And then even again, back to that sustainability point, really, really keen in that. And I think this just demonstrates the different subsections as well within interests and how they invest and what motivates them. And using this, we're able to make some segmentation for our media categories. So based on interest, which is definitely not the only way to go about it, but how we use these and layer them together is just the first step to creating nuanced and high intent profiles based on how they like to make their decisions.
Great. So now I think this will be a good segue into the first poll. So some of the biggest challenges being getting access to them and choosing the right channels. So through that lens, Lavinia, I'll stay with you for one more moment if you can talk through some ideas around more precisely targeting them.
Yeah, so I mean, we really need to understand their digital behavior and the various different touch points. I think behavioral targeting is really interesting for us. So, how are these individuals spending time online? Are they on premium titles? Are they on finance media? Are there particular social platforms? So really starting to unpack where their time is spent. But that data strategy, I think, is really interesting as another segment. So, first party data could be from a brand's loyalty programs. Second party data is if you've got any partnerships with a luxury brand, for example, and sharing that data. And then those third party sources, which is looking at, wealth or spend indicators, which was similar to what we were saying on the previous slide. And then the last one, which I think we're going to dig into a little bit later, is that location and lifestyle signals. So, for example, activities like golf and, proximity to luxury retail can often be strong indicators. So it's about using all of this. There isn't just one element that is going to drive success. It's about layering all of these different profiles that include things like consumption behavior and brand preference and elements like that, so that you can deliver a really relevant, timely marketing experience for them.
Great. And Yasmin, I'm sure the audience would love to hear your perspective and StackAdapt's perspective as well. So if you could basically talk through the same.
Yeah, so definitely to kind of build on that, to Lavinia's points, there's so many touch points that we can use and that we have to consider, to kind of create that way to reach this audience, which, as we've seen from the poll, seems to be the thing that you guys want to know the most. So just pop some examples here of just some of the ways in which we can target those highly affluent users. So one of the first ways is using B2B and firmographic data. Now, this is not just relevant to brands who are selling a B2B product, but essentially having access to that company data, finding extremely accurate ways to find company owners, C-suite execs, for example, is going to be a great way to minimize waste and also to stand out versus competitors. I mean, from our side, we see luxury car companies, luxury brands, real estate, even like liquor companies use this type of data to access the highest levels of wealth. Then you've got third party. Obviously, Lavinia's touched on that a little bit, but how can we tap into data such as credit card consumption or travel consumption, for instance, to gain access to those high net worth individuals. And then at StackAdapt, we also have invested in creating our own technology as well when it comes to finding extremely accurate ways to target those audiences. So obviously, we talked about it earlier. Having that accuracy and control to really ensure you're reaching the right audience is so important. So obviously, using own data in the platform just means that you have, visibility of exactly what your audience makeup is. but also that you have choice in how you go about that. So yeah, some of the ones here that are StackAdapt's own technology are Travel AI, Page Context AI, and Keyword Rule Targeting. So Travel AI, again, similar point to some of the B2B data. Now, this is not just about being a travel or tourism brand. As Lavinia said, travel is really something that is at the core of that high net worth individual lifestyle and how they kind of see themselves. So we're able, through our own technology, to take multiple touch points. So for instance, how they're traveling, how they're booking, the destination they're going to, the types of activities that they want to take part in once they arrive at a certain destination. Again, are such great indicators of wealth, but also interests beyond that. And then you've got Page Context AI and Keyword Rule Targeting. So sort of group these two together, and we'll get into them a little bit more. But these are fantastic for allowing you the absolute highest level of control and accuracy when it comes to targeting a specific context. So when it comes to targeting a high net worth individual, things like just going after a specific topic, let's say golf, is just not good enough. You have to really get into the weeds of finding the different nuances, and obviously having extremely visible data allows you to have that control and have that choice as well. But also create ad experiences that are going to complement the existing journey that the user is on, which we know is extremely important for high net worth individuals, particularly with that Gen Z lens as well.
Great.
So that was this one, and then I think there's more detail on B2B as well.
Yeah, exactly. And so let's dive a little bit further and more specifically and tactically into, yes, the B2B and then more contextual targeting for our audience.
Yeah, so I know there's quite a lot of logos there, but I think if we were to simplify it, it's quite an outdated sort of way of planning and thinking to sort of only use that firmographic or B2B data as a business product or service. And really using that firmographic data is completely game changer for some of the clients that we work with, because it's really going to help you to zero in on those individuals who have serious wealth, who are notoriously hard to reach. And through some of the integrations that we have at StackAdapt, we've got direct integrations with the biggest B2B data companies in the world, everything from Bombora to ZoomInfo, for example, which essentially means that we're not just taking their data off the shelf, we're actually creating direct integrations and are able to create completely custom segments every single time for every single campaign that look not only at job title or company size or company growth, but also other indicators such as, are they also actively researching other topics around your product, for instance. So really making sure that we are going after the right people. And this is, yes, it's about building those highly targeted audiences, but not just of those high net worth individuals themselves, but also people who highly influence them, such as things like family offices, for instance. Now, B2B data is a great way to get in front of those people, or other key decision makers in the circle, assistants, things like that. So it's just another layer of kind of targeting that you can apply as part of your wider way of how you think about going after this audience. And then, when it comes to contextual, I think we've talked a little bit about, obviously, the need of controlling things, of really being able to understand where your ads are going to be shown. And this is Page Context AI in action as a bit of an example. But essentially what we're able to do is we start with keywords that we've decided are going to be very relevant, that we want to take over, share of voice on. And those are fully customizable. And I guess where it comes to other platforms, and I've been in media agencies as a buyer and things like that for about 10 years prior to StackAdapt. And previously, that's where it sort of ended. You say, these are the keywords I want to go after. And then it's up to the advertising gods to sort of make sure that is exactly where you're appearing. Whereas with page context AI, you would enter those keywords, you would work with us, and then in real time, you would see the exact environments down to the full URL string of where those ads are going to be appearing. So particularly when it comes to a high net worth individual, you might see things appear on there that are relevant or that are brand safe, but potentially don't quite feel right for the exact niche that you're going after. So you're able to see those maybe nuances, scroll back up, add them into exclusions, run it again, and really get that feedback in real time to keep perfecting the strategy to make sure you're really only taking over share of voice and kind of being seen around extremely relevant content.
And now to pivot a little bit, I want to go into one of the earlier topics we started to talk about around premium placements and understanding an overall media strategy. So Lavinia, with all of your experience across planning and buying, maybe if you could talk us through some key ways to reach them.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I was a planner always, right? So these used to always be my favorite campaigns to plan, because there's just so much you can do to reach your audience. It's definitely not boring. So specifically, you need to be thinking about where to gain all that engagement. And obviously this audience expects, has quite a lot of expectation on how media speaks to them. So for example, you need to be considering TV still valuable, but there's CTV to reach those younger audiences. When you're thinking about social's not dead, definitely with the breadth of audiences that we're trying to speak to, but it's about being selective and using them in the right way to get the right type of engagement. And really the creative piece when talking to them, when it comes to content, it's like making sure that the storytelling is fantastic, that the standard of production is really good, and making sure that you're using that in the right places. Another one is technology. We know that these audiences love and adapt to technology really quickly. So it's really key that we make sure that we're incorporating that type of behavior really early into our campaigns. So things like virtual showrooms or luxury e-commerce apps, and just really making sure that it connects in that way. And then personalization, I think Yasmin touched on this earlier, is critical throughout, whether it be the media, the product, whatever it may be. But leveraging things like programmatic gives you so many ways of iterating creative and messaging and targeting and delivering those tailored messages so that you can actually kind of build on that. So there's a few things. I think, look, there's a breadth from media planning. I think there's a few things that you should prioritize. I think it's looking at quality over quantity. It's not about the most impressions, it's about where they are. Creative is incredibly important. Thinking about matching channels to the audience maturity and age. Tech-enabled experiences, personalization. Ultimately, it is trust. These audiences like to trust the brand and really believe that the brand isn't just advertising to them. So yeah, lots of things to consider, but it makes for a beautiful media plan if you consider all of these elements.
I really like the quality over quantity and the value of creative and importance there. So along those lines as well, maybe Yasmin, if you could talk us through more of premium experiences and your thoughts here.
Yeah, I think for us from a programmatic and digital point of view, how we bring that together into a premium media experience, it sort of comes down to three main pillars. So the first one being channels. So how are we creating synergy between those channels? How are we choosing the right channels, but also really controlling that narrative and storytelling from one touch point to another. So for example, when we think about a CTV ad or an audio ad and the mindset that somebody is in, how are we making sure that we build that story, we build that trust, but that we're also following through with potentially other messaging further down the line and keeping all of that narrative really controlled in one place. And also it's about having the decision, right? So it's about deciding, do I want to keep building frequency with the same user? So do I want to maybe gently keep nudging them across different channels? Or do I potentially think, actually, for this occasion, I want to really maximize getting in front of them? So actually frequency capping cross channels is something that we're able to do to create that experience. Targeting is also extremely important. So as we've talked about, this is really about maximizing that accuracy. So this is really about getting the best impressions, not the most impressions. But at the same time as that, yes, having the accuracy, but also building that brand relevance, with adjacent interests, some of which have come up, luxury retail, golfing, things like that. And being able to show the user an ad, the right time in the right place as well. So ultimately about having control of your brand story throughout channel, throughout targeting, and of course creative as well, which Lavinia has gone into quite a bit of detail on as well.
Great. So now I think it would be a great time to double click into some specific channels, and maybe in particular some channels that some of our audiences may normally think of as, oh, this may not be as targeted or as specific to be able to use to reach the high net worth individual. So let's now go into digital out of home and CTV, two of my personal favorites.
Yes, me too. Some of my favorites as well. So, obviously those two channels, the outdoor and TV are, of course, inherently very much broadcast and mass medium channels. And of course, that builds a massive potential issue when it comes to high net worth individuals around, accuracy and reducing waste. So, at the same time, we of course talked earlier about the importance of building that trust and that relevance. And actually, many of you mentioned on the poll as well that your objective is to build a relationship with these people. So, of course, having storytelling, brand building channels like digital out of home and CTV is going to be extremely crucial. And of course, having the digitized versions of these channels means that, yes, we're able to evoke that emotional response and build a brand through those channels, but most importantly, that we can do that in a way that is still going to be, targeted and minimizes the waste, even within what is very much like a broadcast channel. A personal example that I love on this and something that I really enjoy planning as well is digital out of home. So again, digital out of home is such a one-to-many medium by nature. And of course, what most people would do when it comes to planning an out-of-home location plan, even when it comes to something like a high net worth individual, would be to just start by looking at location. And what we actually see is that location, particularly when it comes to such a niche audience like high net worth individuals, it's just not enough. So what we actually do on top of location is we look at things like mobile data and mobile signals to understand, not only where that user is. So yes, their location is important, but also when and how they're kind of tapping into these specific touch points. So what we do when we're planning these out of home campaigns is we start by picking an audience. So of course, here we'd be thinking about those high net worth or ultra high net worth individuals. And we start to understand where those mobile devices are moving across, let's say, a specific city. An example that comes up with this is like, I was planning a campaign on digital out of home recently, and Harrods, which is obviously a very well-known luxury retailer, comes up. But what we actually saw is in those early morning hours, we saw a lot of the more kind of C2DE type of devices in that location, versus later on in the day is when we started to see more of those high net worth individuals coming through. So, again, this is about thinking a bit deeper into those channels, especially when they are, more of a broadcast channel, to really make sure that, yes, you're reducing waste, but also you're creating that really relevant experience for those people. Another option as well when it comes to out of home is really cherry picking those extremely more exclusive locations or locations with proximity to luxury. For instance, we can put screens in things like the business and first class airport lounges. So, anywhere from London Heathrow to Doha, JFK to Geneva, these are going to be some of the locations globally where by nature, the location has also filtered out a lot of people. So yeah, there's some really fun things that we can do from an out-of-home perspective. And yeah, CTV, very similar in the nature of the channel. Again, really great at building that emotional connection, telling a story. You've got the visual, but you can also use sound in a really powerful way. And what I love about CTV as well is that you're targeting the whole household as well, potentially whilst they're together as well. But back to that precision point, when it comes to using CTV over linear, for instance, we're able to really apply that data to get down to those specific locations and households where we actually see that significant wealth as well, and tapping into some of the more premium channels that are available programmatically as well.
I'll take a very quick pause here just to alert our live audience today. We're going to cover one more main topic around localization and cultural nuance that I teed up earlier on. And then we'll go into Q&A and wrap things up. So if you have any burning questions, now is the time to start making sure you have them. Type them into the Q&A section and please let us know. But first, without further ado, let's wrap this up with some insight from Lavinia.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the one bit that gets overlooked sometimes, I think, when we're talking about this topic. I think what we're seeing, we've already covered that it's definitely not one homogenous group. And that actually cultural context does play quite a lot of significance in this. And when you start to look at it by markets or regions, you do start to see a lot of differences. So, for example, North America, these audiences really believe in philanthropy, sustainability, and so value-based messaging about a brand will really resonate well with them. Go to Europe, what you're seeing is that heritage matters more. So making sure that when you're doing your storytelling, emphasizing things like craftsmanship or having authentic storytelling is going to be how it converts. And then when you look somewhere like the Middle East, they prioritize privacy and exclusivity. So making sure that your communication is a little bit more subtle, a little bit more respectful. So taking those considerations. And I think just, to package all of that up, because there's so much local nuance, I think the most you should do with this is stop assuming that your global campaigns will just work everywhere. You really do need to have, whilst a centralized strategy, really bring through that local nuance. And then making these ideas of regional playbooks would work really well. So they're not just translations, but really thinking about trans creation and the types of imagery and the way your, different USPs of your product that you're bringing forward to light in these different regions will make a difference. And then making sure that you're adapting your media and creative by region and looking at metrics as well alongside this. And I think whilst that does sound like a lot, it's not a constraint. It's just another conversion lever to everyone's toolkit to maximize the performance of all of our campaigns, be it awareness or lead gen or whatever it might be. So yeah, I think you're marketing to many, not just one group of audiences. And I think I would just always keep that in mind.
Excellent. Great insight as always. And that takes us right through. So I see 2 questions have popped up, and that please feel free to add any additional ones. We'll try to get through whatever we can in the last couple of minutes. First, I'm seeing the question, you mentioned the importance of exclusivity in premium environments. How do you balance that with the need for scale in media buying? Interesting. Maybe Lavinia, given your, as you mentioned earlier, your years of planning and buying experience, do you want to take this?
Yeah, I think it's important to consider that our audiences are normal people as well, and they are also consuming some of the news and content that's out there like everybody else. So I think the point around premium environments is really about that trust element, because being seen and having that affinity with premium environments, we know builds trust. But if you also, we all know how expensive that can be. And so if that is the case, it's doing that really with good decision making. And I'm sure Yasmin can also kind of discuss how you'd be able to do that efficiently through programmatic buying, but also just considering that it isn't just all premium as well. There are so many digital touch points that you can access to generate that scale alongside this. I don't know, Yasmin, do you have much you want to add to that at all?
No, I think I think that's similar to what we would see. And I think it's kind of a similar question that somebody else asked as well around, how do we go after them without also hitting everyone else at the same time? And one thing that we found really powerful as well is working with, you'll probably have this information, but also working with, let's say, our data teams or your agencies, to also just find language and imagery and content that is more specific to that audience. So when we think about like a contextual keywords or browsing segments that a user would have had to go after, is really picking topics that aren't more those aspirational, products or services, and really choosing the things that are going to be of highest relevance. But I think the one that will guarantee it more is actually the use of data, right? So we talked about obviously B2B data. So already, if you're going after the owner of $1 million plus company, already that's going to exclude your kind of aspirational audience. Or if we're using credit card data to really find qualified users who are of a certain wealth, again, that is going to exclude that. So I think it's obviously using the data to really have that precision, but also thinking about the more fun side of it, like the nuanced topics that only very niche audiences will even know about as well. So it's a bit of a combination of the two. And when it comes to the scale question, I think that's where it's really important to start thinking about multi-channel, because if we start to go extremely niche on targeting on, let's say, just one channel, we're very, very quickly going to run out of users. And there's, of course, only so many of them. And that's where thinking about incrementality and tapping into different touch points and channels will help us to tip that balance by opening it out as well.
Great. And I think we have time for one or two more questions. I see them come through. So first one, let's see, how can we reach the high net worth individual specifically for lead gen? Lavinia or Yasmin, if either of you have thoughts.
I can take that. I mean, look, the audience is the audience. What we're talking about when it talks about lead gen is those KPIs and actually looking at where in the user funnel we're targeting them. So I think the tactics themselves, like if you're thinking about that classic marketing funnel, you might use some of those more premium placements for that awareness piece. And that's where your programmatic retargeting or your social retargeting might come in to more drive that lead gen. All of that awareness that you should have driven through all of the activity that we talked about previous in this deck, it's going to naturally improve your search. So making sure that you've got search, SEO as well. So there are tactics to make sure that you are maximizing your conversions when you get to that lead gen portion of your campaign. And there will be better channels for particular fit like KPIs, but that's just a part of a larger piece. And I think particularly for these audiences, you really do need to think about that long-term communication strategy of awareness through to conversion, because if it is something that is a more high intent purchase, high consideration purchase, then it's going to take a while, right? So yeah, I would say it's just considering where and when to, pull, invest more in certain channels.
Excellent. And then Yasmin, I'd like to go to you for this one, since you really mentioned how to leverage that B2B data and things like that. So if you want to target only the ultra high net worth individual, would you recommend using B2B data first, or how would you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, we would probably never recommend that you just go down one route. So as we've said so many times, these are real people at the end of the day. They're normal people, despite all the wealth. So I think it's really important to layer different strategies, but also have more than one so that you actually know what is working and what isn't, and you can kind of compare them. So absolutely, B2B would be one of the first things that I would recommend. But I think it's really important to supplement that very data-targeted audience strategy with also more of a contextual strategy to build that credibility as well, because it's not just enough to show the right ad to the right person. You also need to show your ad around the relevant environments and places that build trust. So yes, that would be one of the absolute first things that I would recommend. But I would absolutely recommend that you look at the bigger picture and you think about, how am I going to create that media experience that really speaks to them and it's going to stand out versus everyone else who wants a piece of their wallet.
I would just add something as well to this one, because it's really interesting, because these are billionaires, right? I would think audience segmentation when you're doing these campaigns is really interesting. We're talking about the individual at this point, but if you are a high net worth, ultra high net worth individual making an incredibly high cost purchase decision or investment, you're working with financial advisors, wealth advisors, you're working with brokers, and we always recommend to consider the broader audience of how do people make decisions for that particular brand or product, and actually, is it bigger than what we're thinking? So not being too laser focused on the person, but also how they go about making decisions and what advisors do they use, and should we be talking to them as well? So it's an interesting topic. We can talk about it for hours.
And speaking of, this went by so quickly. Thank you all for joining us. I know it looks like we have a couple of final questions. We can follow up with you all after, or feel free to email us any questions you may have if you haven't asked them already. And to wrap things up, just wanted to launch a quick survey for everyone who's still here with us today live. We'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment to share feedback. And if you have any thoughts for what you'd like to see us cover in our next Performance Plus webinar, would always love to hear that as well. So we'll launch that right now. And if you have any other questions as we go, yep, we're about to wrap up shortly. And if anyone who is still there, just double checking if you can see the survey go out. Cool. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you all for joining us today. We'll give you a couple minutes to finish, but thank you again so much for the time. I hope you all got some great insight out of it. I know in preparation for this, I got a ton of insight from both Lavinia and Yasmin. So yeah, a big thank you to our participants today and to our live audience for the great questions. Thank you, and we'll speak to you soon, I'm sure.
Absolute pleasure. Bye.